Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This is how, exactly how we discussed earlier, that's how Dharma brings growth. Following Dharma brings emotional maturity. One is able to outgrow one's reactivity. One learns to be a responsible person, not a reactive person. The tsunami of strong preferences and prejudices about wanting this, that, or the other, and not having got one's way, learns to relax. And this is what has to be done at home. This is what has to be done in the ashram, institutional settings, or wherever people are with other people. This is how to grow. It's very easy to ride roughshod and do whatever one wants to do. But it takes something special, some kind of a growth which you yourself initiate out of your own desire to follow this dharma, out of your own desire to be a better human being, because that is the desire that is very much there in all people. Everybody has this desire. Nobody wants to be uncompassionate, unkind, unforgiving, resentful, revengeful. Nobody wants to be that. But yet, this growth has to be initiated by oneself. Because it's not like aging. Aging happens. That happens naturally. We talk in the Shastra of 6 vikaras, Shad vikaras. And that happens naturally. One is born, one survives the birth. Then what happens? One survives the birth, and after that one grows up. One blossoms. Then it is downhill. Apakshiyate starts to decay, and then pranashyati, destroyed. All living beings go through these 6 forms of changes or modifications. This is not something exceptional. This happens automatically, whether you like it or not. The baby starts to walk. Whether you like it or not, the baby starts to talk. All these things happen. But to grow in a different way, to grow into being a more or less fulfilled person, that takes an initiative. That's where the free will is harnessed. And the best way to ensure that this growth happens is to adhere to a life of dharma in all the iterations that we have discussed earlier. That is the best way, because there is no other way. Dharma is the mooring, it is the home, it is really as close to jnana as one can get. Even though dharma and moksha are far apart by way of purushartha. First dharma, then what? Artha kama, then moksha. But dharma is very close to moksha in a sense that The person who is dharmic has a lot of freedom, inner freedom. Because one has grown out of the ragadveshas. One has become like Dasharatha, incapable of following dharma, even at the cost of great pain to oneself. Incapable of not following, transgressing dharma, even at the cost of great pains to oneself. This is the complete human being. And for such a person, Vedanta becomes a possibility. This is the prerequisite for Vedanta. For every knowledge, there is prerequisite. If a fourth grader says, I want to do PhD, what will the parents advise? And, parents will say, and the school counselor will also say, guidance, what is given? Complete your high school. You have way to go. You have ways to go. Then after that, get into college. At least you need a bachelor's degree. In some cases, you need a master's degree. Then by all means, you can do your PhD. Sometimes people ask another question. Should I get my high school diploma or should I go for a PhD? One is dependent on the other. This is not a choice. Should I have apple or orange? It's not the choice of similar things. One is the preparation, the other is the destiny. Without the preparation, one cannot enter into this Vedanta. So this is what it is. One grows into a person who is mentally secure, emotionally mature. And that requires a lot of sensitivity and giving up, a lot of mindfulness also. And then this is what is meant by yogaha karmasu. Karmasu means with reference to actions. What is the definition of yoga? Yoga means kaushalam. Kaushalam means a job well done. Which job are we talking about? We are not talking about any particular job. Action. My action is well done when it is first surrendered to dharma. Dharma becomes that which backs every action. Then such a person is a vividisha sannyasi, even though they might be running a corporation. You see, there is no conflict here. They might be running a corporation, but they are doing it in such a way that they are following all these things that we are talking about. And we have examples of that in the Shastra. One of them is King Janaka, not Sita's father, but I guess Janaka was a very common name. There is the King Janaka who is in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. He had self-knowledge and he was managing a huge kingdom. He was reigning king. So much so that the people could send from various ashrams, the monks would send their brahmacharis, their students, to King Janaka to be trained. One such fellow came from some ashram. And the king gave him a sadhana, an exercise. He was asked to hold out his hands. Upon his palms, 2 lamps were placed, oil lamps. They were not lit, they were just placed. And then the lamps were full of oil. And he was told to go like this and take a tour of the palace. A tour guide was assigned to take him to various rooms and explain the significance and the history of each. And took several hours. He said also, the test was not to spill a single drop of oil while touring the palace. The brahmachari was very careful and earnest, sincere, and he took great care to not even just forget spill, even tilt them. So he walked with great poise and determination, went through all the rooms and presented himself in front of the king, happy and slightly proud that not a single oil drop had been displaced. He was happy with himself. Bho Rajan, O king, O your majesty, look, not a single oil dropped. The king said, very good, wonderful. Now tell me, what kind of art is in room number 432? The brahmachari could not, because he said, how can I pay attention to the art and what paintings are there and what stained glass may be there or what artifacts you have kept, antiques, etc. in palace room number 432, when all my attention went to not spilling this oil in the lamps in the hand. So the king said, never mind, go again. And know that next time when I ask, it will not be about room number 432. It will be about some other room. Meaning, pay attention to everything, not just one thing. This is what a karma yogi is. And this is what a jnani is. Karma yoga is for the sake of jnanam. If anybody tells you, I am a karma yogi for the sake of karma yoga, then that is like I said earlier, that's like wearing a tuxedo in order to stay at home. What's the point? All dressed up, no place to go. There is still more to go, and that is this vividisha sannyasa. One becomes ready. So we have examples. Like Janaka. Another example is Ashwapati, another king who had self-knowledge and yet was engaged in activity. So there are so many different models and so many different ways of inhabiting this desire to study, inhabiting the knowledge itself. And so these two definitions, Samatvam yoga uchyate and yoga karmasu kaushalam, comprise the preparation for vividisha sannyasa. Without this sannyasa basically is inner freedom. The outer clothes are just a reminder. Sannyasa means giving up the reliance on various props to be okay physically, emotionally, mentally. Giving up that reliance. Learning to live freely. That is what it is. That freedom is called sannyasa. And this is what the preparation is. This is the high school diploma. This is the graduation before entering into PhD of Vedanta. Now, back with this, we can go back to the text. There is some very nice passage, a quotation. We'll examine one quotation. Page 16 on the bottom, and it says 7 of 82 on the top. So here it says, after the quote we just read, leave the first two sentences of the next paragraph. Na karmana na prajaya dhanena tyagenaike amritatvam anashuhu iti tyagascha taitariyadi shruyate. Tyagascha Taitariyadi Shruyate. This is also coming in the Kaivalya Upanishad also. Kaivalya Upanishad mantra is there, and maybe the third mantra or the fourth mantra in the Kaivalya Upanishad, I forget. And in the Taittiriya Upanishad, the Taittiriya, not Upanishad, Aranyaka, the quotation is already given there. And this is something we chant at the temple. That's why I'm taking this up, because we chant this at the temple 3 times a day. In the pujas it is there. Na karmana na prajaya dhane na tyage naike amritatvamanashuhu parena nakam nihitam guhayam vibhrajate yadyatayo vishanti vedanta vijnana sunishchitarthat sannyasa yogat yataya shuddha sattva aha te brahmaloke tu para antakale paramritat parimuchyanti sarve dahram vipapam parame eshma bhutan yat pundarikam puramadhya sadgastham tatrapi dahram gaganam vishokas tasmin yadantas tadupasitavyam. This is what is chanted. First part we have already seen. Na karmana, not by action. Na prajaya, not by progeny. Not by wealth. Na dhanena. Then what? Tyagena. Only by letting go, only by renunciation. Eke, a few. Amritatvam anashuhu. They made it. They gained immortality. They understood that they are one with the whole. They dropped, samsara dropped for them, and they gained the truth of their being as free, whole, without a second. Then, after this, there are 2 things that are talked about. Very nice, what does it say? Parena nakam nihitam guhayam. So 2 pathways of these yatis, yatnashilatvat. Yatnashilatvat means these people who have striven for this moksha in the correct way, using the correct kinds of tools, etc. And so for these people, two kinds of sannyasa are being discussed in this here. One is Vividisha Sannyasa, the other is Vidvat Sannyasa. So, I think the other way around. The first one that is discussed is Vidvat Sannyasa, and then the other one is Vividisha Sannyasa. How? Parena Nakam Nihitam Guhaya. They have understood something. What have they understood? Nihitam guhayam, inside their own buddhi. Buddhi is always equated to guha. Guha means what? Cave. Don't cave in, wake up. Okay. Yeah. Buddhi is equated to cave. Why? Because it has a quality of many things not being visible, dark, hidden, full of stalactites of doubts, stalagmites of despair, bats of viparita bhavana flying around. Viparita bhavana means I'm not good enough, I'm an idiot, I need something better. I don't love myself. That's why I want others to love me, and that's also not happening. This is what it is. So, that is why the guha is cave intellect, buddhi, and in that buddhi Bhagavan is present, because without the Bhagavan the buddhi is not lit up at all, but the Bhagavan is not visible due to Atma Ajnanam. And so therefore it's called the cave of the intellect, nihitam guhayam. Everywhere in the Upanishad, guhanihitatvam is something that is talked about a lot. And the same thing is modeled in our ancient temples. Don't go to the modern temples. Go to ancient temples. And if you go to ancient temples, what do you see? There is no artificial lighting at all. Natural lighting. And then you have to go through doors. In fact, you don't have to enter the door at all. People behind you will make sure that you enter. They push you through. So you just keep going. Then what happens? You go through, and then you are there, and then you are finally in front of the sanctum sanctorum, the ultimate place where Bhagavan resides. Let's say you go to Madurai Temple, Meenakshi, Goddess Meenakshi Temple. You've just heard, you haven't seen, you're full of excitement, and your eyes adjust to the low lighting. There's no other lighting. And inside, you don't see anything at all. A small flickering lamp maybe, that's it. The walls of the temple are made of rock, black. The deity itself is carved out of a black monolith stone. The priest who is inside, being from South India, is also dark, cannot be seen. Also black. And then finally there is Arati. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. The camphor lamp is lit and the whole deity is lighted up. Then you go, oh, this is Goddess, oh my goodness, oh my Goddess. Wonderful. She's wearing this kind of a sari, that kind of a necklace. And she is radiant and blissful. And she is amazing and wonderful. This is what it is. The camphor lamp represents represents the knowledge of the Shastra. And the sanctum sanctorum, one's own mirrors, one's own buddhi. Where even though the Goddess is sitting, one is unable to appreciate, unable to see. Because there is there is lack of management, raga dvesha management. There is lack of dharma assimilation. Too many priorities, too many thoughts crowding, all these things. There's no room for the Goddess to say, I am here. And Atma Ajnanam. But then the Shastra is the light, and which lights up the Lord as the indweller, as the truth of the indweller. And then what happens? The camphor burns away without a trace. You don't see any leftover camphor afterwards. I mean, nowadays, unfortunately, some impurities are there. But if you get pure camphor and burn it, after it's burnt, there is no more camphor left. There is nothing. And so, this way, it's a prayer. Please burn away my ignorance without leaving any impurity. This is what we do 3 times a day here. This is what it is. So here, nihitam guhayam, in the cave, seated in this quote-unquote cave of the intellect, and parena means beyond. Nakam. Nakam means heaven. Very interesting word, Why does Nakam means heaven? Kam Brahma. Kam means Bhagavan, Brahman. A place of happiness called Kam. Kam Brahma also. Kam Brahma also. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, both are given. Kam Brahma, Kam Brahma. But here it is Kam. Kam means happiness. And then Akam means no happiness. Then you negate that. Na Akam. And then what is that? Again it is Kam. Again it is Brahman. Again it is happiness. So therefore, Nakam means heaven, happiness, place of happiness. Kind of a double negative. So in this, in one's heart, in the cave of one's heart, that which is beyond even heaven, Brahmaloka, all the lokas, what is that? Yad vibhrajate, that which shines. What shines? Brahman shines as oneself. And unto this heart, the yati enters. Unto this knowledge, the yati enters. The sage enters. Yataha, yatayaha, plural. The sages enter. Meaning, it's all knowledge. So they have become one with this knowledge, which reveals Bhagavan as the truth of themselves in the heart. Amazing. Beautiful. This is Vidvat Sannyasa, because there is knowledge there already. Then the same word Yatayaha will come again, but then how did they get this? But before that, how did they get this? They get this is common for both. Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitarthaha. They got it by two ways. One is through understanding the Sakshat Jnanam, by understanding the truth of Vedanta, Vedanta Shastra. Vedanta Vijnanat, Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitarthaha. Sunishchitarthaha means the meaning has been ascertained well by whom? Pardon me? No, we are talking of the sages here, the sannyasis. Yeah. So, the meaning of the words of the Vedanta, has been well ascertained by whom? Those sages. Yatayaha. See, the Sanskrit compound is like that. It resolves in certain ways, and so to resolve the compound, we have to say the meaning has been ascertained by whom. And so it is not a question, it is a resolution of the compound. Yeah, it sounds like a question, but it isn't. So, the understanding of this has been accomplished by whom? Such people are called Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitarthaha. Why not Vedanta Jnana Sunishchitarthaha? Why Vijnana? Vijnana means the knowledge of Bhagavan as fully understood, perceptibly understood. Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitarthat. And then Sannyasa Yogat, by accepting a life of sannyasa. And then what happens? Then again Yatayaha comes back again. This is another set of sages here. Shuddha Sattvaha. Shuddha Sattvaha means those yatis, those strivers, sages who are of pure mind, because they are dharmic, because they have initiated this growth. What happens? Te brahmalokeshu parantakale. At the end of their life, they go to Brahmaloka, para amritat parimuchyanti, and from there they gain this immortality and liberate themselves, and they are liberated. So you see very clearly, first is what? Vidvat Sannyasa, and then Vividisha Sannyasa. Very nice. Only part of the quote is given, so that's why I'm looking at the whole quote, since we chant this here every day. In fact, if you pay close attention after this class, the arati that is done, they will be chanting this mantra. Very, very nice. So this is how they gain this knowledge, and both Vidvat Sannyasa, the sannyasa of where the person already knows, and Vividisha Sannyasa, both of them are talked about with this quote. And the quote becomes a segue for a very interesting section that Swami Vidyaranya takes up. Let us look at that. Asminscha tyage, with reference to this tyaga, in this tyaga, striyaha api adhikriyante. Women are also entitled to tyaga, giving up. And this is a very bold thing to say in the 13th century. I mean, even now, it's very difficult for people to recognize women as sannyasis, much less respect them, as even in India. So, it is a very, very bold thing to say. And the practice of ordaining women had fallen out of use, was in disuse for a very, very long time, until Pujya Swamiji and a few other Swamis revived it back. So this is a very, very bold thing for him to say, and that's why this makes this section very, very exciting, interesting to look at. So striyam, striyaha api adhikriyante. Women are also entitled to this. And he gives a reasoning. Bhikshuki iti anena strinamapi prag vivahad va vaidhavyad urdhvam va sannyase adhikarah asti darshitam. He says, he gives many reasons why women are entitled to sannyasa. They are entitled to renounce, they are entitled to study everything. Why? The first reason he gives is that because in the Sanskrit language there is not just the word bhikshukaha, which means what? Mendicant, living on alms. There is also the word bhikshuki. That means that if the word is there in literature and in the Dharma Shastra, that means there must have been some bhikshukis roaming around. So female mendicants living on alms. And so this is what is called bhikshuki. So that is the first reason he gives. So this is because it is there in the grammar and because it is there prevalently used in literature and other works, historical works. So that means there were female renunciants. And then iti anena, so for these reasons he says, strinam api, for women also, sannyase adhikarah asti iti darshitam. We see that women have a right to sannyasa. Then what happens here? He gives two conditions, however. Prag vivahat, before marriage. Vaidhavyat urdhvam va, or after widowhood. After widowhood. After widowhood or before marriage. Why not during marriage? Because it would disturb the family lifestyle and create problems, that's what. If the husband was also renouncing, perhaps that's an option, like it happened with Yagyavalkya and Maitreyi, but that is more of an exception rather than the rule. Then, so these are the two conditions. Vaidhavyad urdhvam va sannyase adhikarah asti iti darshitam. Tena, and they are entitled to the following things. Bhikshacharyam, going around for alms. Going around, gaining their food through begging alms. They are entitled to that. Bhikshacharyam. And then moksha shastra shravanam. They are entitled to listening to Vedanta Shastra. So this whole thing, women should not study Vedanta, is moot. Women should not study Vedanta, women should not chant Om, all these things were some later interpolations. It is not there in the Shastra at all. So, Bhikshacharyam, Moksha Shastra Shravanam means listening to the Shastra for the sake of moksha, listening to Vedanta. In the Aittariya Upanishad, there is one section, and then before that section begins, it says, if there are any pregnant women in the audience, you can please shut your ears for the next portion, because this could harm the baby. You either get up and go, or close your ears. That means what? Women were in the audience listening to Vedanta Shastra, listening to Vedanta, which is, that itself shows. And then, so they were entitled to study Vedanta, Moksha Shastra Shravanam, Moksha Shastra Shravanam, Ekanta Atmadhyanam. Ekantam, solitude. They are entitled to solitude. So they are entitled to sit in a place and be by themselves without needing to be disturbed. And if they are disturbed at home, they are entitled to go somewhere else where they are not. For the sake of what? Atmadhyanam. And the Atmadhyana means contemplation. For the sake of meditation and contemplation, they are very much entitled to do that. Very, very nice section. So then, and then not only are they entitled to do that, Atmadhyanancha tabhihi kartavyam. In fact, they are expected to do that. Because if all the people seeking Atmajnanam are doing that, if the men seeking self-knowledge are going and meditating and doing all kinds of sadhanas, why not the women? The women are also entitled to do that. Nay, they are expected to do that. Tridandikam cha dharyam. And just like the staffed sannyasis. Staffed sannyasis doesn't mean sannyasis with numerous assistants. No. What does it mean? Sannyasi carrying either one or three staffs, 3 sticks. And what does it represent? The body, mind, senses, ego, etc. to kind of depersonalize it. And here women are also entitled to carry the staff or the bunch of 3 staffs. Tridandikam cha dharyam iti moksha dharme chaturdhari tikayam sulabha janaka samvade. He gives an example here. First he gives the example of the grammar. The word he is proving it. What are his proofs? That women are also entitled to sannyasa. Proof number 1, there is the word bhikshuki. And so we can see that there, and in the examples, women are there, and we can see that they do this, and they can take sannyasa, they can listen to shastra, all these things. And then another one he gives from Mahabharata, and moksha dharme means moksha dharma parva, a section of the Mahabharata. Moksha dharma parva. Moksha dharma parve and Chaturdhari Tikayam, which is also highlighted in some commentary, he says, Sulabha Janaka Samvade. This must be some other Janaka. Everywhere there is Janaka. We don't know if this is the Janaka of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad or some other Janaka. This is in the another Janaka in the Mahabharata. Also a knowledgeable person, but this Janaka here is seen as a person who was very proud of his knowledge. Proud means rightly so. I mean, he was very erudite and he knew it. Then one day, a woman in orange carrying 3 staffs came. And she said, I have come for Vada Bhiksha. I have come for Bhiksha of an argument. I would like to debate with you. I want for my alms, instead of food, give me your thoughts. Let us talk about certain things. So Janaka says, sure, come. And he is not a sannyasi, so she is. So he washes her feet and does all the paraphernalia and the customary way of receiving the sannyasi, and then they sit down for a dialogue. And very soon, according how the story goes, she sees that he is saying one thing but thinking something else. She can see that discrepancy. And she asks him, "May I go sit inside your head?" This is exactly how the dialogue flows. And he says, "Sure, go ahead." And so the story is that with some magical powers, she either read his mind or literally went and had a vacation in his head. And then when she came out, she says to him, "O king, you are not what you seem. You have all these thoughts. In fact, you have thoughts of doubt, resentment, even against me, but you are expressing something else. And you have all these, you exhibit the signs of a knowledgeable and erudite person without necessarily having that inner integrity." She informs him after coming out. And of course, he doesn't take it very nicely, naturally, because he's outed in the worst way possible. And he's irate, he's angry. And then he says, "You have violated me, and you did not take my permission before sitting in my head, and before visiting my thoughts and my head." And she says, "No, you gave me permission, I asked you." And then after a while, it's a long story, but then he goes away, they sit down again for dialogue. After one or two rounds, he understands that, yes, you are far superior to me, and he accepts defeat in this debate. That's how the story goes. So that is Sulabha, and this Sulabha is dresses like a sannyasi and is carrying the 3 staffs. So this is what is the reference. And so this is, I suppose, the Smriti Pushti. Pushti means proof that women are entitled to sannyasa. Then another proof he gives from the Brahma Sutra. Shariraka bhashye vachaknavi ityadi shruyate devatadhikarana nyayena vidhurasya adhikara prasangena tritiyadhyaye chaturtha pade. So Shariraka means, Shariraka is a pet name of Brahma Sutra, Shariraka Sutra. And so there also Vachaknavi. Vachaknu is the father of Gargi. Vachaknavi means Gargi. So this Gargi, who is also like a sannyasi and who is called Brahmavadini because she was the teacher of Brahman and had a very important job in filtering all the sages who would sit in the assembly, in the august assembly of knowledgeables, again in the kingdom of one another Janaka. Yeah, so many Janakas. And so that is, so the presence of Gargi in the Upanishad and the repeated allusion to it in the Brahma Sutra is also proof that women could be and indeed were sannyasis. Then something else is there. What else is there? Yeah. Then he says, then he gives the Ataha eva Maitreyi Vakyam Amnayate. Amnayate means Shruyate. From the first conjugation verb Mna. Yeah. Amnayate. So, Shruyate means it is heard. So, we also hear this in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And what does she say? Yenaham amrita na amritasyam kimaham tena kuryam. Yadeva Bhagavan Veda Tadeva me bruhi. So Maitreyi here is asking for the knowledge of immortality, which leads to sannyasa, which leads to moksha. And as I told you, in the ancient times, sannyasa and moksha, or wanting to go towards moksha, was all one. The lifestyle and the destiny were all seen together. So what does Maitreyi ask? Maitreyi says, Maitreyi gives up all the money that he gives, all the wealth that the husband is about to leave her, and says, not so fast. That for which you are going, what are you going for? And leaving all this behind. Amritatvam, he says. to understand this, that the I is immortal. Oh, so then, with this money that you are leaving me, will I be immortal? She asks. A sarcastic question, because like here you are giving me all this money, but you are leaving it and going somewhere else. Will I also become immortal? No, no, no. He's an honest man. He could have said yes, yes, and gone away. He says, no. Na vittena asha asti amritatvasya. There is no hope for immortality with money. Those are two different things. Your life will be, comfortable. Yatha upakarnavatam jivitam syat tatha te jivitam. Upakarnavatam means those people with resources. So just like there are people and people with resources, your life is also, they live comfortably, they take holidays, they go here, go there, buy this, buy that, most of the things they don't need. But then, that's exactly how your life will also be. It will be fun, maybe. You can go and have vacations. You can buy things. And you need not worry about being on the streets. That is how your life will be. And to that she responds like this. Yenaham amrita nasyam. By which I am not going to be immortal. Tenaham kim kuryam. What will I do with that which is not going to make me immortal? And there is a sense of urgency because he is asking to leave. He is asking her permission to leave. So she says, Yad Bhagavan Veda, whatever you know, very quickly, Tadeva me bruhi. What you know, you please teach me and go. And so, in other words, here we see a nice confluence of Vidvat Sannyasa and Vividisha Sannyasa. He is on his way to lead a life of Vidvat Sannyasa, but because of her eligibility and for this knowledge and because of her interest, he gives her Vividisha Sannyasa before he departs. Very beautiful. And iti, and then I think this thing changes. Let's see. There is one commentary that I am referring to on this by one Achyutaraya Modak. So interesting, so some of the things gives a little extra information about this. Then comes, that is this Stri Adhikarana, means the portion about entitlement of women. Then comes who should not take sannyasa. Brahmachari grihastha vanaprasthanam kenachit nimittena sannyasashrama svikare pratibadhe sati. Pratibadhe sati means sometimes the students, householders, and who are they? The vanaprasthas means hermits living in the forest, are not in a position to take sannyasa because they perhaps don't have the emotional maturity, the mental strength to renounce, etc., or they haven't yet progressed in their development to gain the knowledge. And so this is, this is what, so such people should not, should focus on developing themselves. That is the idea. They should develop themselves, and if they cannot take formal sannyasa, they should take type 1 Vividisha sannyasa, which is what? Developing their mind, emotional maturity, and all these things, and not focus on this paraphernalia of sannyasa, etc. So this way this I think kind of concludes. Yeah, this concludes the section on What is that? Vividisha Sannyasa. About the part 2 of Vividisha Sannyasa, where the person takes the formal vows, there is nothing to talk about, he says, because it's already been talked about in other texts. It's already been there, and this has already, he says this at the end. This Paramahamsa Ashramaha Sa Purvaihi Acharyaihi Bahuda Prapanchitaha. This has already been talked about by the previous acharyas, etc., etc. So there is no need for me to reinvent the wheel. Iti asmabhihi uparamyate. Therefore, I stop right here, he says. Because what is unique here is the type 1 of Vividisha Sannyasa, without taking sannyasa, how to live like a sannyasi, and how to focus on knowledge, and how to grow emotionally, spiritually, etc. This is, this is what is the unique thing, and this is what has been talked about. And so he concludes this section. What is that called? Iti Vividisha Sannyasah, meaning, therefore, I am concluding the section. Then he starts on the Vidvat Sannyasa, the sannyasa of the someone who already knows Vedanta, what it looks like, what it is. Atha Vidvat Sannyasam Nirupayamaha. Now we are going to talk about what this Vidvat Sannyasa is, etc. And then he says that he says several things, and so he says this Vidvat Sannyasa is not easy, because it has lot of prerequisites. And what are the prerequisites? Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. That is an important prerequisite. These are important prerequisites of Vidvat Sannyasa, also of Vividisha Sannyasa. But the Vividisha Sannyasa means Sannyasya Shravanam Kuryat, meaning after renouncing you can still sit and do Shravanam. But Vidvat Sannyasa you would have already gained the knowledge of the Upanishads, and then only you take this kind of Sannyasa. This is what the idea is. So what is Shravanam? Listening. Listening to what? Listening to Upanishads. Listening to Vedanta Shastra is called Shravanam. Then the question is, and we'll be spending some time on this, why Shravanam? Why should I listen? Because it's not available any other way. Not available at all. You have to listen. How else are you going to get it? And we've already discussed this topic in satsang and other places, that because of the way the ignorance sits, that is why the listening is there. And because of the type of ignorance. What is the kind of ignorance? It's ignorance not of the objects, but of the subject. It is an ignorance centered on I. And who is the one trying to remove the ignorance? I. This is the problem. Kartra karma virodha. There is a subject-object contradiction. But then there is no contradiction. Because if supposing, I have a scratch here, some insect bite. So then it starts to itch. So then what do I say? This part is itching. And so I scratch. Who is the scratcher? Me. Who is the scratched? Me. Why not say that? So easy. So here also we can say the same thing. Here it is easy because there are body parts. In the example, in the udaharanam, there is a body, there are body parts. And based on those body parts, there is, scratcher, scratched, possible, the same thing, same locus. But here, Atma has no parts. No parts at all. So how can you say now that this is, the knower and the known being one, the knower cannot know the known because, so first point, knower and known are one. That is the problem. Second point, the knower cannot know the known because that which is to be known is not an object and not available for objectification. Yattadadreshyam agrahyam agotram avarnam apanipadam. That which has no hands, no legs, no eyes, no ears. This is what we are talking about, which is formless. So, that is the second difficulty. The first difficulty is the knower and the known are identical. Second difficulty is that the knower cannot objectify the known. Number 3, all objects come to light because they are objectified through some means of knowledge. And since the Atma is not an object, all the means of knowledge that I have are useless. Number 3. Number 4, therefore I need a new means of knowledge that is outside of me, because this means of knowledge is going to reveal who I am necessarily by knocking off the knower. The knower is knocked off. That is what is the idea. The knower does not remain knower anymore, because you cannot say, I know Brahman. That is what happened to the student in the Kenopanishad. The teacher must have given a trick question. What is the question? Who knows Brahman? Me. One student raises the hand. Yadimanyase suvedeti dabhram evapi nunam tvam vetha brahmano rupam. He says, if you think you know Brahman very well, you don't know Brahman at all. Your knowledge is like a little dust, little piece of lint, like a dust bunny. And then the other students are flummoxed. Okay, maybe that's not the real answer. What's the real answer? Oh, if that's not the real answer, maybe I should say, I don't know Brahman. So the other one gets up and says, I don't know Brahman. Yeah, I can see that from your face, says the teacher. Sit down, shut up. Then what is the correct answer? Naham manye suvedeti, no na vedeti vedacha. Yonas tadveda tadveda, no na vedeti vedacha. Very diplomatic student, but happened to be the correct answer, very clever. And the third one says, what does he say? He says, I will not say I don't know Brahman at all, neither will I say I know it very well. And in fact, whoever in this room knows of which I speak, they also know it very well. They also know it so that they don't know it very well. Something like this he says. Very nice. We'll see what that means in the next class. And the next class is, for this will be of course in the morning, but today's class, one more reminder, 3:45 to 4:45, because we have Pradosha Puja. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaga Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.